Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Today is May 3rd. I'm super excited to have Rob Panepinto on. I love that name because I'm a good Italian too. Oh, good, right? I want to say it with a good accent, but I don't have that in me right now. Let us know that you can hear us or see us. I am excited because I think Rob has a lot of good stuff. He's got a great story, but we want to make sure you can hear us or see us. That's always my biggest fear, as you know. So I see a thumbs up, so thank you, Neil. That means Neil's on and he can hear us or see us.
Hi, Neil.
Hey, Neil. So welcome, my friend. What's up, Juan? How are you? So we do a lot of this, as you probably know. I try to engage them because they're all good. Thanks, Neil. So welcome. So let's tell the little story about how we got to each other. Our mutual friend Jan Edwards, right?
Yes.
We got to give her a shout out.
Yeah.
Jan was talking smack about me.
She was.
No, it was good smack though. Hey, Alana. Hey, everybody. And she said, you should hook up or connect with Ted. And so I always love engaging people that I don't know. This is the first time Rob and I have met.
All right.
But I love his story. I love talking to anybody who's a good Italian. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so give them a little, we're going to get to all of what's going on. Rob, if you don't know or didn't see the link, is running for Orange County Mayor. But we want to get the history. People like to get to know you. They want to know where you're from, what your background is, and your whys in business, and then we'll shift to your whys in politics and why you are running for mayor. That's a big thing. So give us a little background on you.
Yeah, so I've been here for almost 25 years now. I grew up in New York City and came down here a few years after getting married. My wife and I, Stacy, we've been married for 27 years.
My wife is Stacy, and we've been married 27 years. Can't make it up. Does she spell it with a Y or an EY?
EY.
Mine's Y, so there you go. Hey, Jen.
We have two wonderful teenage daughters, both of whom born here. Allie is 16, Samantha's 14. We live out in Winter Park. And I came down here probably for the same reason a lot of people did. My parents had moved down a few years earlier. We were living in New York. I was working in Times Square before all the renovation, a very different place. And we just kept coming down here on vacation and just saw this as a place of amazing opportunity and a place we just said,
it was also warmer, Rob.
It was warmer. It was warmer, and you could buy a house for next to nothing, and we were young, and so we came down here, and I got a job selling advertising on iDrive.
Wow.
In an interactive, this was actually pretty cool. It was a defense contractor in the simulation space back in the 90s, and they had won a contract to build a multimedia advertising kiosk, full motion video in 1993.
Wow. How did that look? Full motion video.
It was a big box with a small screen. It was not. It certainly wasn't all that fancy. But that got me down here. And when the convention center expanded in the mid 90s, they didn't let us expand. And so here I was, the only commercial guy in a defense contractor, and I saw the writing on the wall and started looking for a job. And found myself, as fate would have it, with interviewing to work at a small manufacturing company, an audio cassette manufacturing company. We used to make audio cassettes.
Does anybody remember audio cassettes besides me and Rob?
Yeah, out in Winter Garden. Again, before the trail, so I have a habit of being in places before they transition. And but the company was becoming something interesting and fascinating, and we weren't quite sure what at the time. And I joined when we were still very small, and we transformed multiple times. The company then was called Magnetics. It ultimately became a company called Connections. I was fortunate enough to have partners that believed in that the people you wanted to build the business around, if they were willing to buy in and put their own capital at risk, they could actually become partners in the firm. And so a couple of years later, I had the chance to buy into the company and become one of the junior partners in the organization. And we transitioned 5 or 6 times, a great entrepreneurial story with a lot of struggle and a lot of success, and ultimately we became really good at selling health insurance to individuals.
Okay, wait, so let me say hi to a few people, and I want to know about how you went from mixtapes, no, that's Juan's thing, to health insurance. Hey Brian, hey Neil, you're not old, and everybody says hi to you. No mixtapes, Juan, although I remember those. I still have some of mine. Our kids don't know what mixtapes are. So how did you go from audio to health care?
Yeah, there are about 4 steps in between. So the philosophy was that we knew we needed to transition out of manufacturing, and the question was, do you manufacture other things or do you move into services? And all of our cassettes were spoken word, so it wasn't a lot of music, and they went into something. And so we moved into consumer packaging. So we were a fulfillment company. And once you start shipping orders to consumers, the next thing is, can you take an order over the phone? So we built a call center.
Nice.
That was the late 90s. The first e-commerce boom hit. And so all of a sudden we were helping very early e-commerce companies build their early websites. Back in the late 90s, a lot of Florida companies were trying to do that. And so we rode that wave. That crashed in 2000.
Right.
We decided that call centers were better to grow than fulfillment companies. We were really good at business-to-consumer sales. So we were always looking for industries where that were moving away from a business-to-business transaction and one that could be business-to-consumer. And so we were in the mortgage industry, your industry, and a few.
Oh, look, see, you got a plug. I got
Yeah,
a plug.
yeah.
Appreciate that.
And but we saw some of that business start to move to India. So we started to look at industries that were moving from business to business to consumer, but also needed to be done domestically in the United States, and healthcare was a perfect opportunity. And we launched back in 1999 one of the first Blue Cross Blue Shield plan ever to sell health insurance directly online. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, and we were selling Medicare and individual insurance almost 20 years ago online.
Did you all have to be licensed? I'm fascinated because I have an
did.
insurance background. So
We did. So we would staff our call centers with licensed insurance agents, which created a really actually, not to shift to economic diversification and economic development, but it created a great model because you could hire people at an early stage or as an entry level, but then
Right.
give them a career path up by getting them licensed, and that became a very big part
That's
of
very cool.
what we did. And so when Medicare changed in the mid 2000s under the Bush administration, and then later individuals started to change with what would ultimately become the Affordable Care Act. This was way before that. We were the experts in what was a small industry that became a big industry,
Right.
and we were able to leverage that to grow. And then we ultimately sold the company in 2011 to United Healthcare. By that time, we were about 5,000 employees,
wow.
and about 1,200 of them here in Orlando. The company is still here, and our old office is just east of Pine Hills.
So
It's still there.
did you retire in 2011?
No, I stayed for a couple of years. It was actually, for me, it was a lot of fun at first to be part of a really big company because I'd always been part of entrepreneurial companies. And so, you're always kind of the little guys that can. And now we were part of the largest health insurance company in the world. And for a while, that was exciting.
Right.
For a while. And I stayed for about almost 2 years. And then I completely transitioned what I did. I set up Florentine Strategies, which is essentially just is a holding and investment arm for me to largely help and support other early stage companies and small businesses, mainly in this area. Because again, I think that's a big part of what we need to move us forward. And I think if you look at Austin and Silicon Valley and a lot of those places, those who have had success in those communities have tended to try to get back involved and reinvest. And so I did that on the professional side. And then everything else has been civic engagement and giving back. So
Where did Florentine come from? I think I know this answer.
you probably could figure out the answer. So for me, I think that you can really make special things happen when you can combine the strengths of government, politics, finance, and art.
Agreed. I love it.
And who was the center of that?
That's right. Florence.
With the creation of the Renaissance. So
We talked about
that's
Florence,
where that
how we
that's
both
where
love
that
Florence.
right. But so that's where that came from, because it really intersects my philosophy of how the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector really need to work together to solve problems. So that and my love for Florence conveniently worked very well together.
So do you work with, and by the way, hi Rebecca, hey Tony, Neil, you're not old, I already said that. Hi everybody. I like to give them shout outs. When people come on and they actually take time to comment, you want to give them some love back.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm very glad people are on watching. And I think people are very interested, and we're going to get to the mayoral race. Mayoral is such a hard word. Mayoral race. And we're going to talk about what made you get into politics. But I do want to talk about the nonprofit and the for-profit, because I think you're right. It's not really a disconnect. I think they just don't know how to work together in a collaborative way that makes sense for all parties. I think it's a challenge. You've got so much on the nonprofit side where there's board members, and everybody's got an agenda. And so to try to figure out how to collaborate sometimes is the challenge.
Yeah, and that's been a lot. We sort of did the professional side of what I've done post the company, but the other side has been civic engagement, and a lot of it's been in nonprofits. So I've done a lot of economic development work, some of it on the small end, and the early stage end here with the startup incubators downtown, or what was originally Canvas and Firespring Fund and is now Starter Studio. I was on the founding boards of those organizations and still on the board there. I've been the chair of Orlando Inc., which is our regional chamber of commerce here, and I was part of the group that put the two big economic development organizations together, the old Chamber Central Florida Partnership and the old EDC into the Orlando Economic Partnership. And I've been involved in transportation, being part of the Central Florida Expressway Authority Operations Committee. I've learned tourism taxes through my life at the Central Florida Zoo. And
the zoo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Lane.
Mike Lane?
Mike Lane,
Zoo.
sure.
Yeah.
I see a shout out to you, Mike.
Yeah.
That's cool. But
Yeah.
you've done so much that you've got this perspective that's kind of wide
Yeah,
range.
yeah. And the other big piece has been being at the Central Florida Foundation Board. So the Central Florida Foundation, for people who might not know, is our local community foundation, and we drive what I'd call really the innovative philanthropy in town, and often it's the connectivity of private philanthropy, government dollars, and business dollars. So if you think about how we're trying to address housing right now, the Housing First initiative, the Central Florida Foundation has been the repository of those dollars that have come in from different sources, and helps manage some of the performance of the program. And that really led me to a lot of work in social enterprises, which is what you're talking about. So I've started two initiatives. One was called Entrepreneurs in Action. And there I got some other experienced business guys and folks who had been in entrepreneurial endeavors, and we were mentoring nonprofits to work through some of the issues that you just said about, can a nonprofit design a sustainable revenue stream? Not all can, but some can. But sometimes you have to break through the issues of the boards and governance and things like that. And from that, I got to meet a gentleman named Ben Hoyer, who, if he's not been on this show, he should actually be on this show too.
Well,
you probably know Ben's name.
I probably do.
Yeah, so Ben started a social enterprise here in town called Credo Coffee.
Yes, okay, so
And
I
it's
know
an
who Ben is.
amazing civic leader, and he had started a grassroots accelerator to help incubators, help for-profit social enterprises. We have really merged the entities and created a program called Rally, which is a partnership between Rollins College, the Central Florida Foundation, Entrepreneurs in Action, the City of Orlando, Credo, Clean the World, and some other corporate partners. It was actually a really nice article.
Clean the World. I love Sean.
Sean's a
Amazing.
very close friend and another great leader in the community. And in fact, the Sentinel just did a story on our first class. So it's a 6-month program.
I understand. See, I didn't know.
Florida
that there was that.
abolitionists,
Yes,
Florida
yeah,
abolitionists, which were both. Tomas was in
Yeah.
our first class,
Yeah.
and we've helped him figure out whether he can actually get paid for his training. And social enterprise to me is so critical because it will allow you hopefully to solve social issues, and if you're a nonprofit, not have to be reliant on government funding or philanthropic.
Well, the donations are such a difficult thing because there are,
It's
first of all, there's
sporadic.
so many platforms
Yeah.
to get to you. Then there are so many platforms that people go to. Then there's this whole distrust. Is it too big? Is there too much admin? So people really don't know a lot of times how to donate in a way that is impactful to the organization.
Correct.
And so then they also don't know which one to do. They have a heart for, let's say they have a heart for cancer, anything cancer. Well, if you Google cancer nonprofits, there's 1 million of them. And so what do you want to do? Do you want to do national? Do you want to do local? Do you want to do regional? And it's a very hard thing to kind of maneuver through.
That's right. Yeah.
So
that's
that the nonprofits have to find other ways to generate money, to have that revenue stream so they're not dependent on just the donations or the philanthropy.
Correct, and that's what we're trying to do at Rally. And then we're also actually investing equity dollars into the for-profit social enterprises. So Entrepreneurs in Action has actually now become a social venture fund.
I love all these words. Social venture fund.
Yeah.
I love
And so we're actually investing. We're actually going through our first cohort. We're actually going to invest in a program, a company called Omnimodal, which is helping provide real-time visibility to bus data and integrating it with other means of transportation. It could actually be a huge game changer as you think about the struggles people have in trying to get mass transportation and find their way to work and employment and home and to get their kids. So that's just been a great program.
It's difficult, especially transportation is such an interesting thing here, because I feel like we're very forward thinking in what we want to accomplish, but not everybody. Like, I've never been on the Sunrail, so I say that all the time. I'm guilty of it, so I haven't utilized it. I think it's amazing, but if you talk to people, they want to have it on the weekend, and so there's just so many challenges. Even if we're bringing stuff in, Lynx is another thing that goes. Limo goes around the city. I've never been on that either. But people really do utilize it, but I think a lot of people don't know how to utilize it. And so the transportation's there and we're getting better, but I think having other alternatives and continuing to offer other alternatives is critical.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely do that. I mean, the challenge, when I go out and I talk to people, I'll at some point, because we'll talk about mass transportation, I'll say, how many of you been on Sunrail? And if I can get, the best I've ever had is maybe 20%. I mean, and in some cases, no one has ever ridden Sunrail, and I think we do.
Sorry, I'm one of those.
Yeah, look, I do think we need to get it to the airport. We're going to need to figure out a way to have it run more frequently during the day and on weekends and at night. And then, because it generally runs parallel for the most part to the I-4 corridor, we're going to have to continue to find ways to connect to it. I think we're actually doing some pretty interesting things more in Seminole County right now, where some of the cities up there are, although Maitland's doing this well, where we're partnering with Uber and Lyft. The government's actually subsidizing Uber and Lyft to take people from the centers of employment back to the Sunrail station, because in many of the Sunrail stops, it's not where people work. I mean, if you think about Maitland,
right.
Maitland Center is 4 or 5 miles down the road from where the
Correct.
Sunrail station is.
Right.
So if you can have people be subsidized, take Lynx or Uber, and Lynx is working on this as well with shuttle buses to be able to connect. So that's the challenge. We've got to make it easier for people to use it and make it more efficient, because if it's not convenient, people are just
and
not
that's the
going to use
difficulty. It's not just like, for somebody like me, it has to be convenient, but for most people, they have to figure it costs money to get to some of the stations, so that and that's what you're talking about, the convenience. It's like, I'm not even sure where it is downtown, but the one that I know best is the one in Winter Park, and to me that's at least close to Park Avenue and kind of the business area there.
Right.
But other than that, I'm not sure where this one picks up, but I've heard that it could be a challenge. But to say that's not a negative. I'm saying we're continuing to improve, but I think a lot of people don't know how to access.
It's a start, and it needs
start.
broader access. And listen, it's still a challenge for people in parts of the community too who are trying to get to their jobs, where it's taking them a couple of hours.
Right. So
to
let's
move to
transition. I want to hear a lot, because is this the first office that you're running for? I don't know the answers to these questions. That's amazing. So you're taking a full dive into Orange County Mayor. So give us your why about that, and let's talk a little bit about the behind the scenes, the decision-making process. What did Stacy think?
Sure.
I'd love to hear that, because I think it's such a big commitment, but such a wonderfully selfless thing to run for public office.
Well, I'll tell you, it really got born out of a couple of things. Part of it was all the initiatives that I've been involved in, which are heavily engaged with government, and how the private sector and the independent sector work with government. And so, to be honest, to some extent, it came from some frustration, because, as we were talking about before we came on the show, it is so easy and so apparent what is wonderful about this community.
That's true.
Right? I mean, there's so much positive energy, so much momentum. And I'm sitting here, you guys can't see this, but we're looking out at downtown, and there's been amazing transformation here. And unemployment is low, and yes, the weather is great, and taxes are low, and we're a young community, we're creative, we're diverse, we're inclusive, we have a great airport, we're the tourist capital of the world. All those are apparently easy, wonderful things, and we should celebrate those things.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, we've been dogged by some things that I think are deep and systemic challenges for us. We're traditionally one of the lowest wage economies in the country. We have
That's so fascinating to me. Is that because it's so transient and tourist related, or
it's part of it, and because we've not really been able to build other industries quite yet to the scale that we need to, and certainly I'm going to try to do. We have a real housing issue here, and it goes up the income stream. I mean, you've got kids. 30% of renters in Orange County are paying half their income in rent. You're a mortgage guy, so you know the number is supposed to be about 30% of their income.
It's crazy, but a lot of them, it's hard to convince them. It's hard to get that information out, especially since most of the renters, I believe, tend to be in the younger crowd, right?
It's a mix, but right.
And
sure.
so they're not house people, or they haven't been shown how it can be good. So our industry as a whole is working on that. But you're right, there's so many apartments going up.
But they're expensive.
They're expensive, and they also, a lot of people go, how is that impacting my schools, my taxes? Why wouldn't you want to be in a house?
Right.
But it's difficult to convince that group otherwise. But half of their income that's just insane.
So we've got a real issue there. We've been talking a little bit about transportation, and then there's a host of social issues here that we really suffer from. We continue to have a homeless issue. I mean, I'm involved in several initiatives to try to make that better. We've talked a little bit about that. Again, we've got our housing issue. We've got an opioid challenge and epidemic, as a lot of parts of the country do.
Are we big in that again because of the population, because of our industry, our hospitality industry? I'm not naming them, but why is it so big here? Why is it? Is because our population spread out? I've had this asked a lot. I had David Siegel on. He talked about his views on opioid and the opioid addiction problem.
Yeah.
Why is it so prevalent here?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's prevalent in a lot of places.
It really is. It's not just Orlando.
No, but I do think there is a certain, it does, if you look at the statistics on a nationwide basis, it does hit certain socioeconomic classes more, and we do have more of that.
Well, this goes back to wage,
goes back
right?
to wage, right.
And back to housing. So talk a little bit about the homeless. You said you're involved in the homelessness initiatives, or and so what are you finding there? Like, there's a lot of amazing. I mean, I love what Shelley Lawton does. And there's just so much positive that's here, but there's still an issue. We're still having problems with that. And so, what are some of the things that you see that we can do to help that?
Yeah. So some of the things we're working on, and I was with Shelley and David Swanson, who we talked about earlier about kind of what is the next phase, and we've done a good job of putting several hundred chronically homeless and veteran homeless in homes.
You call Freedom Village? Is that what it's something over there that was all veterans?
For veterans, right.
Yes. So we do amazing things.
We do.
It's just that there's so much more that can be done, and how do we do that in our city? Yeah. And our county, because this is county. I mean, but I'm saying our area.
But it's certainly true of the city as well. Remember, the city's part of the county. So I think some of it is related to our housing stock, and again, the lack of affordable housing, and so that those two are somewhat tied together. Some of it is mental health and treatment for some of these for folks, and getting them off the streets and into treatment and help. So unfortunately, it's something that is going to continue to require comprehensive focus and diligence, and particularly in downtown. I think we've got to also, we've got to be sensitive to people who are trying to build businesses, and moms who trying to take their kids to the library, who live in Thornton Park, and
I agree.
And the libraries, it's where those folks.
And how do you do it in a humane way?
And then that's the balance, right?
Right. Because that's the thing. Like there are some counties that I won't mention that are close to us. Some of their initiatives and some of the things that they're doing with the homelessness community, I just find them so inhumane, and you guys can do your own Google research on that. And that's nothing like Orange County or Orlando is doing at all. But the approach tends to be this weird, let's eradicate them. They're not humans, and not here. That's what we do.
No, for sure.
But a lot of places, even close to us, some coastal counties especially. I'm amazed at how we treat them and how we think of them. And if you think of them like that, you're never going to solve the problem.
Correct.
And that's, I think, the challenge.
Correct. And so all of that, right? All of this conversation we've been having, and not really tackling these things, I think, in a strategic and innovative and purposeful way, is what got me to really thinking about this. And at the end of the day, it actually boiled down to my girls. Because my oldest is looking at college. And so we're going on college tours.
Wow.
And you start talking about where are you going to spend your life.
Yep.
And I'm not so sure that she sees this community the way I referenced how I saw this community and why I
My
came
kids
down
did
here.
not eat. My oldest went away. By the way, it's a trap, so don't send her away. Make her go local. They never come back. My oldest two think this. Well, all of my kids think the same way. They don't have the same thought process or engagement here that we have.
And I hear that. And I hear that when I talk to people all across the county. I hear that from our entrepreneurs who are concerned for a different reason because they struggle to raise the capital they here to grow their businesses. I hear it. You hear it from our friends and neighbors who are coming to live here from Puerto Rico and trying to figure out. I mean, where they've brought here unfortunately by catastrophe, but are now saying, how can I build a life here? And I think to solve these things, we just need, in all due respect to folks who are in public service. So I'm not one of those, hey, if only government ran like a business.
Right.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of idiots. That is not what I think. But I do think we need to think more broadly about how we solve these problems, and we need to think more innovatively. And you can't really worry about whether you can put out a direct mail piece in 4 years upon re-election where you can check the box and say you've solved the problem. Because, by the way, these problems are going to take time to solve.
It takes a lot of time. I think that's the thing. I mean, I definitely feel like even in the time that I've been here, which is 41 years, it's 42 years, it's changed so much. But even in the last 5 years, that we've had a tremendous amount of positive growth. I think we've had so much, like you said earlier, we're a community, diversity, inclusion. I mean, you feel it. That doesn't mean that we don't still have things that we need to address. And Rebecca has a question. If you're mayor, who would you have on your staff if you could? Wow, these are questions I don't want to ignore. So I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Actually, there's going to be some significant opportunity to change staff at the county just because some of these folks are coming to retirement. So rather than mention names, let me give you more of a philosophy. So I think clearly what I would want to do is to bring in people who have some outside perspective. So I think you will see me surrounding myself with folks who may certainly have government experience, but also would have spent some time in the private sector or in the nonprofit sector, depending. Maybe subject matter experts in their areas of expertise. But you certainly want to make sure you've got some people there with institutional knowledge. But I think, from my perspective, as I said, I think we need to look at things differently. So I'm certainly going to surround myself with really bright, smart people who come with broad perspective. And by the way, I think there are a lot of bright, smart people who are doing interesting things in communities all across this country.
I agree.
Who would look to an opportunity to come down here and be pretty excited to come down here. So I think that would be more of my philosophical
I think that's what's
approach.
wonderful. Like Mayor Jacobs has been in office. I don't remember what the term limits are.
She'll be in 8 years when
So
she's
8
finished.
years.
It's
So
2 4-year terms.
It's interesting to me because I think that the way that, and I know she's actually announced that she's running for school board chair, I believe. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting though is that we have this amazing opportunity at this awesome time in our community to make such a change in the way that we do things. So some of the people who have been there 8 years or longer will transition out when we have a new mayor. And I think that's exciting. I think people really are kind of wanting stuff to change and wanting it to change in a positive way because we do have so much of that great energy in here.
Listen, I just want us to fulfill that potential and that excitement we see for ourselves. But there's work to be done. And I just, rather than talk about it or have task force about it, let's roll up our sleeves and
All right,
start
Vic
to get
Colazzo
it done.
says I
Vic
love
Colazzo.
Vic.
I know Vic.
I've known him since
Vic.
college. Thanks for coming out to Avalon Park for a coffee talk with me and the neighbors. You're the only one to do it. And I think that's another thing. I think that if I could encourage anyone who's running for office in any particular office, I don't care what it is, if you are not engaging with the people, you are missing out because there's so much positive, wonderful energy and there's so much great ideas. You need to really get out there.
Well, and the community, and listen, this is a big county, so the communities are different. And Vic, I was out there with Rotary a couple of days ago, so we've been out to Avalon Park a lot of time. I was in Apopka this morning for breakfast, and the different parts of the counties have different issues, and particularly some parts of the county are part of municipalities, and so they have different issues and how they work with the county or things that are important to them. Out in Avalon Park, where in a sense the county is also their city in terms of because they're unincorporated in Orange County and they're a little further out, they're dealing with some different issues as well. And so you do need to be out in those communities because Avalon Park is very different than Winter Garden in terms of the
Completely
things
different.
that they're focused on and the things they really need in their community. Out west, there's a lot of growth right now in terms of houses, but how do we create jobs out there and drive economic development? So you're absolutely right. If you're not out there talking to people across the community, there's no one community here. This is a 1.3 million people, and we have different needs and different issues.
And yet every decision impacts all of the communities.
Of course.
So you have to be involved. I encourage the community leaders to be involved. It's so important. Alana says, if you get in the office, please let's work together to help our homeless and displaced veteran population. Alana works with vets2success.org, Brian Jacobs, and that's something that we have a tremendous amount here. I have a lot of friends, a lot of people here at the club that work with the VA and the veterans.
Sure.
We have so many groups. That's such an underserved, in my opinion, my opinion, this isn't Rob's, but my opinion, our veterans group nationally and certainly everywhere is underserved. And so anything that we can do to get out and help them, but they're such a big part of the homeless community. And so it's such and that's why Freedom Village is there, and that's why we're trying to do things, but there are so many more things that we can do. All right, we went past, but I loved it. It was awesome. Any parting words of wisdom? And we're going to share all of Rob's information. I tagged him not only in the post where we're doing the video, but in the earlier post, and I'll tag him again when I share the video, and he will too. So go to his page, which is Rob Panepinto, for Orange County Mayor.
Actually, it's just Rob for County Mayor.
Oh, that's right, Rob for County Mayor.
Rob for County Mayor.
I like that. That's easier.
Yeah. We make it easy for not having anyone have to worry how to spell Panepinto.
But any parting words of wisdom for them?
Well, I think I'd like to just be where you were at the end. I think, be engaged. I am, to be honest, I'm sometimes surprised about how many people who, when we do talk to them, aren't as connected to county politics or don't realize that there's a mayor's race coming up in August. I mean, the primary is in
They don't realize
in
it.
August.
You're absolutely right.
And they should, because look, most of your tax dollars, your local tax dollars are going there. And if you think about all the big things that we were talking about early on, and some of the issues we've been focused on, the county plays a huge, huge role. Regardless of whether you live in the city of Orlando, the city of Winter Park, or out in one of the unincorporated parts of the county. So the biggest advice, look, obviously I'd welcome your support, and please, go to our Facebook page and learn more about what we're doing and the blueprint I've put together for the county. And if you like what you see, let us know, and we're always looking for volunteers, but be engaged. This is I think a very interesting time in our community where, again, so much positive. But let's use that momentum to really address some of these issues and make sure that we really do become one of the leading communities of this next century. That's what I'm going to work. That's what I'm going to work towards. But you can only do that if you've got an engaged population and voters as well. So thanks for giving me some time today.
I'm so happy to have you on here. It was fascinating.
I can't see all the comments, but I see.
But he'll go back through.
I see a lot of stuff coming up, and I appreciate you.
He
so
will
many of you guys.
I look at all the love, lots of love and
I
thumbs
see a lot
up.
of love, which I appreciate.
And Rob will go back through and he'll answer you guys, and I will too. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank
It's
you,
awesome.
everybody.
And we love you guys. Thank you so much for being engaged. Thanks. See you at 2:30.
Bye.